Hi, everybody. Psalmist David here. Happy to be with you again with another fresh bread, a time of inspirational teaching, and then we have some music on the harp. Really excited about this harp. So, today, what I want to look at is we're coming up to Easter next week. Passover is also at this time, um, depending on which you want to focus on. And this Sunday coming would be what they call Palm Sunday, so the Sunday before Easter. And it was an interesting time. I think over these next few days we'll look at several little scenes coming out of the whole Easter story. There's some neat little things God is showing us, and just want to share so I can encourage. So today I want to look at Palm Sunday, and Jesus sent them ahead to find a donkey, and he was going to ride on a colt of a donkey that had never been ridden before. And that was interesting, I found. So let's just read it. Matthew 21. I think Matthew, Mark, and Luke all talk about this story, but Matthew says, "Now when they drew near Jerusalem and came to Bethphage to the Mount of Olives, Jesus sent two of his disciples, saying to them, 'Go to the village opposite you, and immediately you will find a donkey tied and a colt with her. Loose them and bring them to me. If anyone says anything to you, he shall say, the Lord has need of them.'" Okay, they brought him the colt. Now in Mark, Matthew, so in Mark chapter 11, it's interesting because he says there, "Go to the village opposite you, and as soon as you've entered, you will find a colt tied on which no one has sat. Loose it and bring it." And back in Matthew then, it says they brought the donkey and the colt, laid their clothes on them, and he sat on them. That's interesting. He's sitting on both beasts. And then the very large multitude spread their clothes on the road. Others cut down branches, etc., etc., etc. And so Palm Sunday rolled out. So what is interesting is Jesus specified a donkey and then the colt. And it says, two places it says a colt on which no one had ever ridden. And different people think different things. One felt that the Old and the New had to do with the Old Testament and the New Testament. And, that's fine. But it's interesting, that phrase, a colt on which no one has ever ridden. And Jesus chooses to ride on that colt. So it's a colt which probably hasn't been trained yet, has not had the benefit or the training of carrying any load like the mother would have had. And yet Jesus chooses to specifically request that this one be brought and he can use it. Well, what this is telling me is that God is very interested in young people, youth, those who have not been tried and true, those who have not been tested, those who have not been given leadership roles as such, those who are still youth, still young people. And very often in the church world, they aren't given a whole lot of space or time or trust, because we feel, stay here until you get older. And when you are a mature person in Christ, we can then use you in whatever function in the church world. It's interesting that a lot of very important roles in the Bible were held by young people. Mary and Joseph were said to be in their teens. That alone is it's a very important thing. And I want young people to be aware that you don't have to get old to then be used by God. He will use you in very major ways He's not afraid of young people making a mistake. Maybe young people maybe getting it wrong. Very much more is the case where the young person gets it right and brings a freshness and does not have issues that the older people have. And so many times God will use a younger person. Daniel and the Hebrew boys were also very young. Many of the people God used, it was in their youth. David was in his youth. God will use older people also, but it is not that God has to use older people, and so he waits till the younger ones get older. So I'm going to encourage those of you who have kids to make space for them, honor their faith. They are God's children just as much as we, our older ones, are God's children. And God doesn't have grandchildren, and God does not need them to become like us and then he can use them. God is very much interested in using young people. And so let's find ways that we can encourage their faith and strengthen their faith. And if you're a young person, just be encouraged that God will use you in a major thing like entry into Jerusalem before his death. And he wanted a colt on which no one had ridden, that didn't have the proven and tested, because he knows that young people are well able to grow into things. So I just want to encourage youth and young adults, those who have not had the issues that older ones have had. God very much wants to use you, and that is an exciting thing to me. Yeah, so I just want to encourage you with that today. Be encouraged, young people. Go forth and do great things today.